I never thought I would end up writing something like this, and honestly, even typing these words feels unreal. I've rewritten this post more times than I can count, trying to decide where to start, what to include, and what makes me look like the worst person alive. But the truth, how I tell it, someone gets hurt, someone looks foolish, and someone ends up asking why I didn't stop things sooner. So here it is, exactly as it happened, from my point of view. My name is Maya. I'm 25 years old, and this story happened at the wedding of someone who used to mean more to me than I ever admitted out loud. His name is Kenneth. I've known Kenneth for most of my life. Our families are connected in one of those messy extended family ways where you're not siblings, not cousins exactly, but close enough that you grow up seeing each other constantly. Birthdays, weddings, funerals, festivals, random weekends where everyone gathers at someone's house for no reason at all. He was always there. Growing up, Kenneth was the boy I noticed without trying to, the one who held doors open, who helped older relatives without being asked, who listened more than he spoke. I had a quiet crush on him for years. Not the dramatic kind, the kind you bury because you're young and scared and convinced it would ruin everything if you ever said it out loud. So I didn't. Life moved on. We grew up. We dated other people. I told myself I'd outgrown it. And eventually, I really believed that. By the time we were adults, Kenneth had fallen deeply in love with Rebecca. Everyone knew about Rebecca. She wasn't a secret. She wasn't a fling. She was the girlfriend. The one who came to every family event with him. The one people already called future wife long before there was a ring. They were together for years. They fought, made up, traveled together, planned together. They looked solid. When the wedding was announced, nobody was surprised. When I received the invitation, I felt normal. Happy for them. Nostalgic, maybe, but not hurt. At least that's what I told myself. Then Kenneth asked me to be one of his groomsmaids. He said he wanted people who mattered to him standing beside him. Along with a few of my cousins and some of his closest friends, I was included. I hesitated for a moment. Not because I still wanted him, but because standing that close to someone you once cared about on the most important day of their life feels strange no matter how much time has passed. Still, I said yes. I truly believed I was past whatever had once existed. The day of the wedding arrived and everything looked perfect. The venue was beautiful, filled with soft light and white flowers. The air smelled like perfume, polished wood, and fresh arrangements. Guests filled the hall, smiling, laughing quietly, adjusting outfits, taking photos. Kenneth stood at the front, already emotional, before anything even started. His hands were shaking slightly. He kept wiping his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. Someone joked that he was crying before seeing the bride. Everyone laughed. It was sweet, endearing. He looked like a man completely in love. Then the doors opened. Rebecca walked in. She looked stunning, calm, confident, glowing. Kenneth completely broke down when he saw her. Tears streamed down his face openly. He didn't care who saw. He looked overwhelmed, grateful, emotional. Watching him look at her like that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect. Not jealousy, not regret, just the quiet understanding that this was a story I was never meant to be part of. She reached the altar. The music softened. The ceremony began. Everything followed tradition. Readings, vows, smiles exchanged. Nothing felt wrong. Until the officiant turned to Kenneth. "Kenneth, do you take Rebecca to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "Yes," he said immediately. No hesitation, no doubt. Then the officiant turned to Rebecca. "Rebecca, do you take Kenneth to be your lawful husband?" She didn't answer. At first, no one reacted. People assumed she was emotional. Someone smiled, whispering that she was probably overwhelmed. Seconds passed, then more. The silence grew heavy, thick, uncomfortable. Rebecca looked at Kenneth, then she looked at the crowd. And then she said, clearly, firmly, without trembling, "No." The entire room seemed to collapse at once. Gasps filled the air. Someone cried out. Someone else dropped something that clattered loudly against the floor. Before anyone could process what had happened, Rebecca turned and walked out of the hall. Kenneth didn't move. His mother fainted moments later, collapsing into her seat, and suddenly everyone rushed toward her. Voices overlapped. Panic spread. Water was called for. Chairs scraped against the floor. And in that chaos, Kenneth turned and walked out through the back. No one noticed. No one except me. I don't know why I followed him. I just did. I found him outside, sitting on the steps behind the venue, his head buried in his hands, shoulders shaking as he cried. Not quietly, not politely. He was sobbing like someone whose entire world had been ripped apart in seconds. I sat beside him. At first I didn't speak. Then he started talking. About how much he loved her. About how he didn't understand why she would do this. About how stupid he felt for believing everything was fine. About the future he thought they were building together. He was devastated, humiliated, angry, confused. Then he suddenly stopped. He looked at me with red, swollen eyes and asked a question that made no sense. "Are you engaged?" I blinked, confused. "No? Why?" He stared at the ground for a long moment, breathing hard, then said something that felt unreal. "Marry me?" I laughed because I thought he was joking. Then I realized he wasn't. "Right now," he said. And that was the moment everything truly went off the rails. I stared at him, genuinely unsure whether I'd heard him correctly. The word marry echoed in my head in a way that didn't feel real, like it belonged to someone else's life, not mine. I remember laughing again, a short, nervous sound, and telling him he wasn't thinking straight. I told him he was in shock, that anyone would be after something like that this was the kind of decision people regret for the rest of their lives. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't argue, he just looked exhausted in a way I'd never seen before. "I know exactly what I'm thinking," he said. "For the first time today, I know exactly what I'm thinking." I told him he was hurt, angry, embarrassed, that he was reacting, not choosing. I told him this wasn't love, it was pain. I told him he couldn't fix humiliation by creating something even messier. I told him I wouldn't let him ruin his life out of spite. That's when he shook his head. "This isn't about spite," he said quietly. "It's about not letting her control how my story ends." That sentence unsettled me more than the proposal itself. He stood up, pacing in front of me, running his hands through his hair like he was trying to physically shake something loose from his head. He said he'd spent years building his future around Rebecca. Years convincing himself everything was fine, everything was solid, and in one moment, one word, she had taken all of that and crushed it in front of everyone he loved. "I'm not going to stand back up there alone," he said. "I won't give her that." I told him I wasn't a solution. I told him I wasn't a replacement. I told him I wasn't something you grabbed onto to avoid falling. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and said, "You're not nothing to me." That stopped me, because I didn't know what to say to that. I reminded him that my parents were inside, that his family was inside, that people were already in shock, that doing something like this would turn confusion into permanent damage. I told him my parents would never agree, that even if they did, I wasn't sure I could. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He said, "Let me talk to them. If they say no, I'll drop it. I swear." I should have walked away then. I should have told him absolutely not and gone back inside. I should have found my parents, helped calm the situation, pretended this moment never happened. Instead, I nodded. I don't know why. Maybe it was sympathy. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the lingering echo of a feeling I'd buried so well, I'd convinced myself it was gone. Or maybe it was simply that I couldn't stand the idea of leaving him alone in that state. We walked back toward the building together, but we didn't re-enter the main hall immediately. He found my parents first, still confused, still shaken by what was happening. I watched from a distance as he spoke to them. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw their expressions shift, from disbelief to anger to concern to something quieter and harder to name. My mother looked at me like she was trying to see through me. My father asked me directly if this was something I wanted, and that was the moment everything paused, because I realized no one was forcing me. No one was dragging me into this. I could still say no. I could still end this before it went any further. I looked at Kenneth. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't hopeful. He looked terrified, but resolved. I nodded. It wasn't enthusiastic. It wasn't romantic. It was small, hesitant, and honest. And somehow that was enough. The decision moved faster than my mind could keep up with. People were still focused on Kenneth's mother, who was being helped by relatives. The hall buzzed with confused conversation, theories, whispers. No one was really watching the front anymore. Kenneth took my hand. My palm was cold. His was shaking. I was still wearing the black dress chosen for me as a groomsmaid. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Standing beside him now, it felt surreal. Dark fabric against white flowers, like we were walking into a different kind of story entirely. When we stepped back into the aisle together, heads turned. At first, people thought I was just helping him. Then they realized we weren't stopping. Whispers spread rapidly. I heard my name spoken in confusion, in disbelief. Someone said, "What is happening?" Someone else laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of breakdown. The officiant looked shaken. He hesitated. He glanced toward Kenneth's family, toward mine. No one stopped it. "Kenneth," he said slowly, carefully, "do you take Maya as your lawful wife?" "Yes," Kenneth said without hesitation. I felt every eye in the room on me. "Maya," the officiant said, his voice uncertain, "do you take Kenneth as your lawful husband?" My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I remember thinking that this was the point of no return, that whatever I said next would follow me for the rest of my life. "Yes," I said. The word sounded strange in my mouth. We repeated the vows. My voice shook. His didn't. He sounded calm, too calm, like someone who had stepped outside his own body. When we turned to face the room, there was no applause, no cheers, just stunned silence. And then the doors burst open. A loud bang echoed through the hall. Something exploded above us, showering the room with confetti. Bright colors filled the air. Party poppers went off in rapid succession. Balloons bounced across the floor. Laughter. Not confused laughter, planned laughter. Rebecca walked in, holding a large cake, laughing so hard she had to steady herself, shouting about how everyone's faces were priceless, how this was the best reaction she could have hoped for. People froze. The laughter died when they saw us, when they saw Kenneth still holding my hand, still walking down the aisle, still married. Rebecca's smile faltered, her laughter cut off abruptly. Her eyes flicked from Kenneth's face to mine, to our hands, to the officiant, to the stunned crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "This went too far." Kenneth didn't let go of my hand. He didn't look at her. And that was the moment the room realized this wasn't a joke anymore. And that's where I'll stop for now, because what happened after that was messier, uglier, and far more complicated than the wedding itself.